Okay, so to pair along with the Polysculpt tools we're looking at this week, I want to show you the soft select options. So these are options that are actually just on the regular manipulators. They're just called soft select. I don't use them as much. I don't consider them very intuitive, but they are a staple for a lot of people. So they are important to know. You won't see them very much in my practical demonstrations, but they are definitely a thing. So just like with the sculpting, I have stuff that has a lot more resolution on it because this is not something you use at like the start of a model when it's like a 3x3x3 cube. This is something that you would use later. All right, we got to double click on the manipulator to get the settings box, and we're just going to leave it open. And if you look down here at all this other stuff, there's something called soft select, and you can twirl that down and turn it on. Now, the way this works, I'm just going to turn on vertex mode, and ooh, look at that. It kind of gives you a preview. This is your soft select. So normally, we select a vertex, that's what gets selected. Soft select allows us to select, and it doesn't update live, which is most unfortunate. Well, that's just strange. Why isn't it going over the whole thing? Stand by. Oh, I have a very, hang on. Found the problem. I have symmetry turned on. There it is. That makes more sense. So as we turn up the strength, we can see in more and more things are selected, and there's color coding here. So this is the fall off color, which unfortunately is backwards from this graph. I'm very sorry. Yellow means it's fully selected, red means it's half selected, and then this deep, deep color means a little bit. And then these edge ones here are not selected at all. So you can see this edge is very, very dark. That means this vertex is a little bit selected, and this one is not at all selected. All right, and that is backwards from this fall off curve, which shows full selection. That's how it goes from full selection to half selection. So again, I apologize that this graph is opposite of this graph. C'est la vie. So what happens when I have something that's soft select turned on? This is all the way selected. These are all versions of partially selected. I pull one vertex and this happens. And you can see that slope has that gradual fall off. That's why, I mean, we look at this profile, it is literally that curve. If I was to turn this to a linear curve, it pulls up like this. If I was to turn it to this kind of curve, you can see a lot of it plateaus. A lot of them are selected, and then there's a fall off. And you can alter this manually so that fewer of them are that much selected. There we have it. All right, so you can see how this would come in handy because you can right away get like a rounded shape from something. So this works on something that's already rounded. Here's our preview. We're going to turn the volume down a little bit. I don't know of any hotkeys, unfortunately, for turning down. Oh, I lied. This is the old hotkey for the sculpting tool. Hold down B and middle mouse drag. Yeah, without holding down B, nothing. Ooh, what? Good grief. Undo. Thank you. Yeah, without holding down B, you move stuff. Now that changes the fall off radius. It doesn't change the type of fall off. And then we can also change, because it doesn't make any sense to do this on an already rounded object. So right now, axis orientation is the world, but we can change it to component. And by changing it to component, because we have component selected, we can then bring these out away from here. Now, this does take a little bit of getting used to because you have to get used to setting up a fall off radius and understanding that when you have this much yellow and this much red and this much black, it's going to do this. It's going to look like this, right? As opposed to if it looks like this, then it will do something else. And that's just, that is a, it takes practice, but I know people, I personally know people who use this tool all the time and swear by it. I think in part because it is a little less intuitive than the sculpt tool, but it's a lot more specific. So once you get used to the notion of what that means, then you'll know, oh, no, no, it needs to be 2.6 or something. And you'll know exactly what the curve should look like. And then you can go from there. As opposed to the Polysculpt tool, which is a lot more just like, oh, let's see what happens and build it up slowly. This is not a build up slowly tool. This is a make it exactly what you need it to be tool and then move on from there. We can also, no reason that says we have to go out from things. If I go into object mode for a second and I turn on symmetry, this does work with symmetry. We saw it there, obviously. So if I select something over here, nothing happens. What on earth? Stand by. Problem solved. I had it on world Z, but this was not on the middle axis anymore, so I had to set it to object Z. But now we do this. Oh, whoops. There we go. That makes more sense. Right? So you can use this soft select tool to get some general selections. And then you can see that it kind of does its, because of the way the soft select works, your edge loops are staying pretty intact. You'd have to go to some extreme things to make it unintact. We can then use the sculpt tool. Relax. Nope, wasn't select. It was selected. What's going on here? There's always something. Stand by. All right. There I must have hit a hotkey that turned it off, but under your sculpt tools, there is something that says wireframe display. Under display, there's a wireframe display, and apparently mine was turned off, which makes things very difficult, especially if you're using this relax tool, which is literally all about that. But there we go. So I can kind of ease that transition a little bit. So that the edge loops are going up there. So even when using the soft select tool, you may end up using at least a couple of these either smooth or relax sculpt tools when you're done. But that's soft select tool, once you turn it on, it is on for all of the things, like all of the manipulators that use this. And then if I turn it off, it is off for everything. So even though you've got a different set of tool settings up here, soft select will stay on consistently, which is a good thing because it's not often that I find myself, well, hang on, let me turn it back on. It's not often I find myself rotating vertexes, I guess, but like if I needed to, I would hate to have to turn soft select back on. It's also the same settings in terms of the volume and the fall off curve and all that stuff. So this setting is sort of consistent throughout all your manipulators that would use it. All right, but it's under, and then when you're done, like let's say you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe of like all this stuff I just did. How do I get my old tool back? You can say reset tool, and it will reset everything, um, except it won't turn off soft select. So we need to, oh, here we go. Reset will reset soft select, but this will reset all the other stuff, including like your axis orientation and all that jazz. All right, so that way we can get, even if you tinkering with other things, you can get back what you need.